So, do you know anything about American education?
Something.
Something? Yeah? What do you know?
Teachers teach.
Yeah, that's true. Students learn, okay. Yeah, that's right. You got some basic ideas. Okay. So before I tell you about it, I want you to tell me what the correct answer is, okay? How many years do Americans go to school? Will we start when we're 5 and go till we're 18? Do we start when we're 6, 18?
B. Or D.
I don't know. Who thinks A? Any votes for A? Alright, B? B? Some votes for B, okay. C? Yeah, 1. D? Okay.
E.
It's A. 5 to 18 years old. None of you were right. 5 to 18 years old. So we go to school for 13 years. It's a really long, long time.
Why does it take so long to teach Americans?
We don't have to go to school on Saturdays. Adds an extra year. Okay? So like I said, we start usually about age 5. Sometimes people start when they're 4, sometimes when they're 6, but usually 5, and go to school until we're 18. You're required to go to school by the government from the time you're 5, so you must go to kindergarten, and you must stay in school until you're 16 or until you're 18. It depends on the state that they require you to continue. In addition to being in school for 13 years, pre-kindergarten is becoming more popular. So there were some students at my school who started in pre-kindergarten when they were 4 years old. So they went to school for 14 years because they started in pre-kindergarten. Pre-kindergarten is not required, but many private schools offer it, and there are some public pre-kindergarten programs as well that are becoming more popular. So this is a chart of the approximate system of schooling and how we break up the years. It depends a lot on what state you're in, maybe even what city, as to how it's exactly divided, but this is a general guide. So generally, there are 3 parts: elementary school, middle school, and high school. So there's preschool, pre-kindergarten, 2 to 4 years old. Elementary school is usually kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Sometimes only through 4th, sometimes it includes 5th grade or 6th grade, depends on the state. So usually when you're about 11, you start middle school. This is sometimes called junior high. And usually 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in middle school. So you're maybe about 11 to 14. In middle school, you start to change classes instead of staying in one room. And then high school is the last 4 years, usually, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And we also have names for each of these years. So 9th graders are freshmen, sophomore, junior, and senior year. That's what we usually call it. So you're usually 17 or 18 when you finish. And then you can start university, which is usually about 4 years. Okay, so we don't go to school all year, usually. Traditionally we start from Labor Day to Memorial Day. So Labor Day is the 1st of September. It's a holiday. Memorial Day is the end of May. So that's traditionally the schedule. But where I'm from in the South, the schedule has shifted, and it's now normal to start at the beginning of August, so maybe August 1st, and go to May 1st. There's a reason for that. We'll talk about that later, but it's because of testing. And in other parts of the country, it's closer to the traditional schedule, so maybe the last week of August to the last week of May. And of course, in the summer, school's out, and we're very excited about that. Yay, no school! So that was traditionally to farm, to work on farms, to help harvest crops, because historically most Americans worked on farms. Now, since we don't have to work on farms, some schools have changed to what's called a year-round format. So instead of getting 2 months off in the summer, they go to school for 3 months and have a 3-week break, 3 more months, 3-week break. So you don't get a summer off. It's broken up. I hated that as a kid. I was so glad my school did not do that, but it's becoming more popular. People think it helps you remember what you learned better. Okay, so we have various types of schools in the U.S. We, of course, have public schools. We also have private schools. So for private schools, you have to pay tuition. You have to pay to go to school. Many of these are church-affiliated schools or religious schools. They're usually smaller than public schools, and they're found all over the country. Parents might choose these because maybe the public school in their area isn't a very good school, or because they want a religious education for their children, and sometimes other social reasons. Catholic schools in particular are all over the country. They have a very strong tradition of Catholic education. I went to a Catholic university, actually, and Catholic elementary school. So at many of the religious schools, they try to keep the price lower so that parents who want to can send their children. So maybe about $6,000 a year, which is actually comparatively inexpensive, but it's still expensive. There are also prep schools, so college preparatory schools. Have any of you seen the show Gossip Girl? Or heard of Gossip Girl? They go to a prep school in New York City, a very expensive prep school. So these are supposed to prepare you for college. Prep school. Preparation. Some of them actually do. Some of them have really excellent teachers, really excellent academics, and can help you get into a really excellent university. Other times, they're just a school for rich kids. They cost a lot. I went to prep school for 2 years, the last 2 years. Mine was $16,000 a year to go to school. That's actually considered cheap for a prep school. The average in my city was $20,000 a year. And there are a lot of parents who paid $20,000 a year for their kids to go to school for 13 years. It's quite expensive really quickly. These prep schools can get even more expensive in bigger cities. For example, New York City and Washington, D.C. President Obama's kids actually go to a prep school in D.C. that is for, I think it's for children of politicians. But it costs $34,000 a year. It just gets more and more expensive. It can really go up from there, so it can be quite expensive. And we also have charter schools. These are becoming more popular in many states. These kind of look like a private school. They're small. The academics are usually good. They're supposed to be good. But they're publicly funded, so they're paid for by the government. So they're kind of a mix between a private school and a public school. So usually to get into a charter school, you either take an exam, and the people with the highest scores get into the school, or sometimes it's by lottery. So say there are 300 students who want to attend this school, but there are only 100 places. So you put your name in, and it's like winning money from a lottery. They put them all in and draw numbers out to see who gets to go to the school. So there are usually more students who want to study there than there are places, unfortunately. Okay, and what students do every day? Usually, if you go to a public school, often the first thing you do is go outside your house and wait for the school bus. The bus will come and take you to school, and then take you home in the afternoon from school. School traditionally starts at 8 a.m. and goes to 3 p.m., so all day. Monday through Friday. We don't go on Saturdays. So this is for all grade levels. But high schools, especially now, it's becoming more popular to start high schools really early in the morning and let them end earlier in the afternoon. So maybe 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. And usually sometime during the day you have an assembly. You all go to the theater or go to a big room and they announce events. So exams are coming up. We're going to have a dance. You need to do this. Please stop leaving bubble gum in the hallways. Things like that. We also eat lunch at school. Lunch in the cafeteria is known for being terrible. Sometimes it's not, but when we think cafeteria food, we think really disgusting, really nasty, nasty food. So this is a typical kind of cafeteria lunch. You have like some kind of sandwich and some vegetables and whatever that is.
Fish.
What?
Fish, no? Fish.
This?
No.
You can't. It's something soft. It might be applesauce. It could be dessert.
Maple syrup.
Maybe it's hard to tell. It's kind of difficult to know exactly what that is. It's probably not very good.
What do we eat?
So, and when we think of cafeteria ladies, this is kind of what we think of. You'll see in TV shows, especially TV shows for kids, they make fun of the idea of cafeteria food and cafeteria ladies. So she's got a hairnet. There are flies because the food is old. You can't tell what food this is. It just looks green and squishy. And she looks unhappy. So this is what we think of for lunch. Not all lunches are that bad, but this is the stereotype. Okay, and what we wear to school? We usually wear clothes. Usually. If you don't wear clothes, that's what they talk about at assembly. So most private schools have uniforms, and it's becoming more common to have uniforms in public schools. The administrators think it helps bring order to the classroom. They think it makes the learning environment more formal. Whether it actually does that or not, I don't know, but they think it does. So this is actually me in my lovely uniform from my prep school. We had these ugly shirts that didn't fit anybody. They looked bad on everyone. So this is during an award ceremony. We're all unhappily wearing uniforms. This is my baby sister. She's in her last year of school, so her 13th year. She's in 12th grade. This was her and her friends in their uniforms on their first day of school. So the prep schools usually have some sort of like plaid skirt, maybe polo shirt, or blazer, something like that. So we also have testing in schools, standardized, so national testing. In some states, about half of the states, you must take a test to graduate from high school. You have to pass this test to graduate from high school. And before that, from 2nd grade through 8th grade, you have to take a national standardized test every year. A few years ago, a law was passed called No Child Left Behind. So the goal of the law was to improve education. It's very controversial right now about whether the law actually helped or whether it caused problems. But it focuses a lot on the grades from these national tests. So if the scores from your school are too low, different things can happen. So the government can come in and, in the worst case, the state, so in my case the state of Tennessee, can come into the school, fire everyone, get rid of all the teachers, all the administrators, and start over. Before that, that's the worst end of the spectrum. Before that, there are other steps that they can take. But these exam scores have become more and more and more important in recent years. So that's actually a big reason why that traditional schedule has shifted, especially in the South. So I said, in my state, school is from the beginning of August to the beginning of May. The reason for that is testing happens at the end of April. So they start school as early as possible to get as much learning in before those April exams. And then after the exams in April, school's out. So the school calendar has changed because of the exams, because they've gotten so important. So you have your class schedule. In addition to eating lunch, you go to classes sometimes. So the traditional schedule is 6 to 8 classes a day. Usually they can last about 40 minutes to 60 minutes. And you have all of your classes every day. So maybe first you have math, then English, then you have history, all of those for 40 minutes in a day. But you have history, math, and English every day. So block schedules are becoming more popular. My school just changed to a block schedule, actually, my high school. And for these, you have maybe 4 classes a day, but they last for 90 minutes. So they're very long. So for a block schedule, you might have math for 90 minutes, and then English for 90 minutes on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you might have science and history for 90 minutes each. So it makes the classes longer. This is becoming more popular. We can actually choose some of our classes. Can you guys choose any of your classes in high school? In school? No? No. You don't get to choose. We have some freedom to choose, a little bit, in high school. You can choose some of your classes. There is no national curriculum, although that's changing a little bit. There's something called Common Core, which is new and is trying to establish a kind of national curriculum. It's very controversial right now. But before, there was no national curriculum. Each state has requirements for what you must study in high school. I messed up my formatting. So in Tennessee, I was required to take math for 4 years, English for 4 years, history for 3 years, science for 3, a foreign language. So the most common foreign languages are Spanish and French. Latin was more common in the past. German is popular in some places, and Chinese is becoming much more popular because of all the businesses in China. So parents want their kids to learn Chinese so they can get a good job in international business. So you have to take that for 2 years, the same language for 2 years. And the state of Tennessee thinks that you should study fine arts, so art, music, or theater for 1 year, and take physical education, so gym, for 1.5 years at least. And then there are 3 years of elective credits. So you can choose 3 more classes, 3 years of classes. I chose to take 1 more year of science and 2 more years of foreign languages. So I took Latin for 4 years to get my elective credits, but you can move them around as you want. So there's a little bit of choice in high school, a little bit. My school also had a technology credit. So we had computer classes, and we had a religion credit. So we took religion classes also. In high school, especially if you're getting ready to go to university, there's something called AP classes. These are advanced classes. They're supposed to be the same thing that you would get your first year at a university. So we have all kinds of subjects for these: calculus, English, history, chemistry, biology, psychology, art, Spanish, French, Latin, all kinds of things. And you take a national exam at the end of the year, and they grade it on a scale of 1 to 5, like Russian grades. So depending on your score, you can receive credit for the beginning class at university. So you don't have to take the class in university because you took it in high school. So to get credit, you have to get a 3, 4, or 5. Depends on the university. More prestigious universities, really good universities, sometimes might require 5, and different other schools might take a 3. So it just depends. Another very important aspect of American schools is sports. Americans really love sports. I don't, which is why I'm here. They kicked me out. So sports are really important for American schools, starting even in middle school. So when you're 11, you might start playing sports on your school's team. This is a picture from my school of our 10-year-old boys' American football team. They're really small. Their uniforms are bigger than they are because they're 10. But they won some sort of championship or some sort of competition. So very happy 10-year-old boys playing their first year of football. There are 3 school sports seasons. So fall, winter sports, and spring sports. There are different sports in each season. So a lot of times people will play 3 different sports in the school year. So for example, in the fall, you might play girls soccer. In the winter, you can play basketball. And maybe in the spring, you can do a different sport in the spring. So you can play a lot of different sports if you want. Usually, if you want to play, you can play. Although there are usually tryouts, so you have to come play for the coach, and this person will choose who they want on their team. Especially if it's a really good team, a really popular team, and there are a lot more students than places on the team. Sometimes it can be competitive. And another important reason for playing sports in high school is college recruiting. So we'll talk about that later, but sometimes you can actually get money for college because you are good at a sport. That makes sports even more important. There are lots of different sports. I told you a few examples already, but the types of sports can be very different depending on where you are in the country and the type of school. Usually bigger schools have more sports. Public schools are usually bigger than private schools, so sometimes they can have more sports. This is a pretty average, pretty normal example of what sports a school might have. So this is a sport that has boys teams and girls teams. So tennis, soccer, basketball, cross-country running, and track is usually for boys and girls. And then we have some sports for just girls and just boys. So volleyball is usually a girls' sport. Cheerleading, so woo, rah, rah, go team, right? Cheerleading is usually done by girls for boys' sports. Boys' teams have football, which is very important. We'll talk about football some more later. Wrestling and baseball. Does anybody know what softball is? It's the girls' version of baseball. So the ball is a little bigger, the field is a little smaller, but it's the girls' version of baseball. No boy would ever want to play on a high school softball team. That would just be embarrassing for him. Although older people sometimes play softball. Like I said, it really can depend on what kind of school you're going to and where your school is. Sometimes schools will have things like a bowling team. Rowing, were you on the bowling team?
Yeah.
Zach was on the bowling team.
Bowling's awesome.
So, crew, maybe like rowing a boat, badminton, golf, my school had a golf team, swimming, it's pretty common, hockey, I think Adam played hockey for his high school team, right? Yeah. Field hockey, lacrosse. So schools can start a team in any sport that they can pay for, they have money for, and that the students want. So really any of these. Bigger schools have more money, more students, so usually they have more sports teams. Lacrosse and field hockey are really common in the Northeast and Midwest, but we don't really have those in the South. They're not very popular in other places. And hockey is very popular in the North, but it's becoming more popular in other places. My school was in the South, and we had a hockey team.
My school had the only lacrosse team in the state.
Really? Your school had a lacrosse team?
Yeah.
In Mississippi? The only one in the state, right? That's
Lacrosse
With
is
horses.
No, not with horses. That's
no resources.
No.
Lacrosse is a game with a very small ball and a stick, and you just throw the ball back and forth. It's very physical. People get in lots of fights.
People get lots of fights.
It's like hockey minus the ice.
Yes, they're less popular in the South. So Zach was on the only lacrosse team in the state of Mississippi, right?
No, we just had it. I wasn't on it.
Oh, okay. They had it. Zach wasn't on it. Okay, good to know. And apparently, men's volleyball is popular in Florida and California. We do not have that other places. But volleyball is incredibly popular there. So they also have men's teams in addition to having girls' teams. Alright, so I told you students often play different kinds of sports. These are my sisters who are athletic and good at sports, unlike me. This is my sister Emily. She's in her second year at university right now. But this is from high school. What sport is she playing here? Does anybody know?
Oh,
Softball. Yes, she's playing softball. She was a catcher in softball. So she was on at different points in high school. She played softball, she played soccer, she was on the swim team, she was on the bowling team, all kinds of different sports. This is her soccer team. This is her right here with the knee brace. Our girls' soccer team was actually quite good. We won several state championships. That's why they look happy. So she was on a pretty good girls' soccer team. My other sister, who's in her last year of school right now, she so far has played volleyball, she's played tennis, did 1 year of cheerleading, she was on the swim team, she played softball, not all in the same year, but she's done lots of different sports. This is Abby. That's her in her cheerleading outfit. And this is her playing volleyball. I like that picture. Okay, quiz. What sport do Americans love the most, in general?
Baseball.
Football.
knitting. Football.
Dang! Okay, who says soccer? No. Baseball?
Baseball.
Okay. Football?
Football.
Basketball? Knitting? Knitting? I vote for knitting too. It is football. Football. Baseball is traditionally called like America's pastime or something, but really football is what we love the most. Football games are really important. Oh, I'm sorry. It was easier to read on my computer. So football is king. It's really important. The most prestigious athletes, the most prestigious teams are the football teams. And the professional football players also make the most money. Far more than professional basketball players. Far more than anyone else. Football also makes money for universities. So this is the picture from my university. We did really well last year. We made it to a really important championship game. And that meant the school got several $1 million for academic programs because of football. They also make money from selling tickets, selling t-shirts with the school name on it. It can make a lot of money for the school. Also, football is important for social events. So oftentimes, a lot of social activities happen around football. So for instance, most high schools and a lot of colleges have what's called homecoming in the fall. So where alumni, people who went to the school, can come back to the school. And there's usually a big dance. There might be several days of fun games and competitions. And at the end of the week, you have the dance and the football game, the homecoming football game. It's very important. All right. There are also lots of other things that happen around football games, especially at universities. For instance, before the football game, people often tailgate. Does anybody know what tailgating is? So tailgating, the back of the truck that folds down is called a tailgate. So a tailgate is when you take your car or maybe you have a recreational vehicle, something big, and you sit in the back of it, or bring chairs, sit around the car, and cook hamburgers, hot dogs, drink a lot of beer, and generally have a good time before the game. You kind of hang out in the parking lot and cook hot dogs in the back of your truck and drink beer before the game. It can get very fancy. Sometimes people spend a lot of money on tailgating equipment before the game. There are also usually a marching band that plays during the football games. There are cheerleaders. There are other activities. Football weekends are like festivals, kind of. A lot of important things happen around and the tickets can be more expensive. So to give you an idea, most of the sports at my college, my university, were free to watch. If you wanted to go watch the girls' soccer team, it's free. If you want to watch the football games, that will be $250, please, for the whole season. $250. There are also tickets for the men's basketball games. I think those were $100 for the whole season. Everything else is free. But we were all willing to pay $250 to watch the football games rather than going to free soccer games. So, in summary, Americans care about football a lot. It's very important in schools. So, we talked about football in college. We know football is important. And we talked about how many different kinds of sports there are in American schools, high schools. Universities have even more sports. So for example, my school had a championship fencing team. So swords and stuff. Rowing is more common. Sailing, we had a sailing team. All kinds of crazy stuff. And we talked about college recruiting in high school. We said that's an important reason why people play sports in high school. So in order to get on the team at a university, usually they have people called scouts that come and watch high school games. They might say, oh, that girl is a really, really good basketball player. We want her for our university. So they offer, you can go to school for free. You can go to university for free if you come and play basketball for us on our team. So those are sports scholarships, and those are an important reason why many high school students play sports. Also, if you want to be a professional basketball player, a professional football player, an important step to becoming a professional is playing in college. So some football players maybe don't finish university. They start, they play for 2 years, and the professional team say, oh, you're really good. Would you like to come play for our professional team? And they leave the university. Maybe they don't finish, and then they play professional football, professional basketball. But if you want to be a professional, you have to play in university for the most part. So you have to be good enough in high school to get chosen by a university to get chosen by a professional team. Sometimes we have people called walk-ons. So if you're not chosen in high school, sometimes you can still try out and join a team after you're at the university, but they usually don't pay for anything. You don't get a scholarship usually. Okay, besides sports, we talked about sports for a long time. There are other activities that we do at school. I did these other ones because I am not athletic. So there's plays put on by the students. This is me, my costume for a play that I was in. There's student journalism, so we have newspapers written by students about what's happening at the school. We have a yearbook which tells you everything that happened that year at the school. It has really bad pictures of people in it. Student government, so students who plan things for the school. They usually plan dances and other things like that, different activities for other students. There's choir, so singing. I did choir. It was really fun, so I got to sing in high school. And band. And the band usually performs at the football games. So this is me in my high school choir. I'm here with my eyes closed. My choir performed. We actually went to singing competitions also. We usually did pretty well at singing competitions. So that was something I really enjoyed in high school. My school had a really good arts program. Our band was good, we had good choir, our theater was good, so I really enjoyed that. And there are also dances, we mentioned dances, and prom, which is the most important, biggest dance, usually at the end of high school. These are pictures of me from prom that I went to, so my junior year, 11th grade and 12th grade. And then we graduate, eventually. So graduation. Do Russians dress like this at graduation? No. Right, my students ask me, why do you wear funny outfits when you graduate? They're weird. I don't know. However, we can blame the British for our funny outfits. This tradition goes back to the Middle Ages, to medieval universities. So professors would wear this all the time. We get this tradition from Oxford and Cambridge. So when settlers came from Britain to the United States and established universities, they brought this tradition of graduating. They're called caps and gowns. So this happens in Britain. It also happens in the United States. This is from my university graduation. And this is my high school graduation. We have the cap and gown again. This is the director of our school handing me my diploma. And my family came. Usually your family comes and it's a big deal. So when you're in high school, you also have to apply to university. This is a long and stressful process for many people. It was for me, for sure. There are a lot of steps, a lot of things you have to do. So your junior year in 11th grade, you start getting ready to apply to university. You study and take the SAT or the ACT. These are national exams to get into university. So your score for those is an important part of your application. You also research colleges, so get information about different universities in different places. You decide whether you want to go to a really big university or maybe a really small college. Do you want to be somewhere near your home? Do you want to be far away in a different state? So you choose which universities you're interested in, and you also make sure to keep your grades good. You need really good grades this year. Right? Then once you start in the fall, your last year of school, you can retake those exams if you need to, and you start to fill out applications in the fall. The deadline for most of those is January 1st. So you must have most of your applications in by then. And then you wait anxiously for several months. In March and April, the schools start to tell you, we have chosen you, you can come to school here, or sorry, there's no space for you at our school. After you get their decision, you have to make your decision and choose where you will go by May 1st, and you usually have to send them money, a little bit of money to hold your spot. So these two tests that I talked about, there's the SAT and the ACT. The SAT is supposed to test your reasoning ability, your logical thinking, or something like that. So it has a verbal section, an English section, there's a math section, and there's a writing section. This test is older, it's more popular. It's scored out of 2,400 points, so you get a score of 1,500, 1,600, something like that. The ACT is newer. It tests more facts and more knowledge than the SAT does, but it still tests kind of skills and logic. It has more sections, so it is English, math, reading, science, and writing. It's more popular than the SAT in certain places. Like, my friend from Chicago said, oh, you still take the SAT? We don't take that anymore. Everybody takes the ACT. Whereas where I'm from, parents will ask, what is an ACT? Asked. What's that? Why don't you take the SAT like normal people? So it's scored out of 36 points. I took both. Sometimes you do better on one test than another. And I talked about when colleges tell you you can come or go away, we don't want you. It depends on the kind of school. So rolling admission, which is more common for big public universities, says, okay, your grades must be at least this good. So you must have a B average or a C average, and you must have taken these classes, the list of classes that I showed you earlier. If you do that, you're in. No matter how many people, you can all come. So that's public university. And deadline admission is usually for competitive schools, private schools, or really, really good public schools that a lot of people want to attend. So what happens? You submit your application by January 1st. You wait. So they have committees of people who look through, read all of the applications, decide who they want at their university, and then they send you a letter to let you know in March or April what they decided. Okay, how much do you think college costs? How much does university cost to go to a public university? What do you think? Is it free? Is it $5,000 a year? $20,000? I don't know. Who thinks A?
No.
You're right. It's not free. B? Now? C?
Community college.
C? Okay. D? Okay. Well, for the average public university, tuition for classes is about $10,000 a year. About $10,000. But there are other things you must pay for too, so don't get excited yet. College is very expensive. It's actually a big problem. College keeps getting more and more and more expensive. The price is getting ridiculous right now. It's crazy how much it costs to go to school. So it's actually a big problem. But for a public school, in your state, tuition is about $9,000. This is the average. Plus, most students live in a dorm on campus. What's a dorm? Yeah, most students live in a dorm on campus and eat in the cafeteria at the school. So that's another $9,500. So for 1 year, it costs $18,500. That's the average. So this is in your state. Universities are usually run by the state. So if I went to the University of Tennessee, because I live in Tennessee, that's how much it would cost. But if I decide I want to go to university in Mississippi, where Zach's from, I want to go to a public university in Mississippi.
Why?
Universities in Mississippi are not known for their high academic standards, necessarily. If I decide I really want to go to Mississippi and go to university, my parents' taxes don't help pay for that. It's in a different state, so it gets more expensive. If I went to Mississippi, it would be more like $22,000 a year for tuition, plus paying for my room and my meals. So that's about $30,000 a year for 1 year. It gets more expensive. If you want to go to a private university, so I went to a Catholic university. Zach went to a private university. It wasn't religious, but a very good private university. The tuition is $30,000 a year on average, plus your room and board is more expensive. Yeah, this is the average. It's usually more than $30,000. This is about the average. Plus maybe $11,000 room and board. So hopefully the dorms are nicer, and hopefully the food is better because it's more expensive. So that's about $40,000 a year. It's really expensive for 1 year. So how do we pay for this?
Credit?
Huh?
By credit?
Yeah, sometimes by credit. So people take out loans. The government has a loan program for students. Then you can also get loans from banks and sometimes from the university. So you take out a loan, so you have to pay it back after you graduate. There are also grants that will pay for part of your tuition. So for instance, at my university, there were businesses and people who would donate money so that students could use it to help pay for their school, certain students, based on their need. So you would submit papers that say, my parents make this much money, I can't afford this school, I need help. And they will usually try and get you some loans or some financial aid. Also, a lot of parents start saving for college when their children are still very young. My mom started when we were less than 5 years old, a savings account for us to save money for us to go to college because it's so expensive. So it's a big problem right now. Okay, so we said 1 year costs that much. So how many years do we usually go to school?
4.
Yes. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or it never ends. Who thinks A? Anybody think 3? All right, good. 4? Who thinks 4? 5? Okay. It never ends. 4. Most of you are right. We go to school for 4 years usually. Go to college for 4 years. So you take that tuition number and multiply it by 4, and that's how much it costs to go to college. It's a lot. So 4 years, like in high school, they have names: freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And in many cases, you can study for the first year without choosing your major, your specialization. So you can study for a year, take classes from different subjects, and then decide, this is what I want to study. This is my major. This is my specialization. If you're not studying engineering or science, you have a lot of freedom to choose which classes you want to take, what exactly you want to study within your subject. Engineering and science students usually have fewer choices. They have more of a set program, like you do this, and then take this, and then take this. We talked about sports, so there are lots of sports. There are also all kinds of other activities in college. Anything you can think of is probably a club at a university somewhere. So I was in the ballroom dancing club. There was a club for people who liked to make things out of glass. There was a club for people who could not eat gluten. There were all kinds of clubs. All kinds of clubs and all kinds of activities. So that's a really fun thing about college. There are usually a lot of activities to do. Alright, in conclusion, it eventually ends and you eventually graduate and then you are done with your education. After your 13 years, plus maybe 4 more, they let you out. And you look very happy like this when you finally graduate. And then, in some cases, you move to Russia. Or you get a job. Either one. All right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.